Welcome to the High School Football Preview Show, sponsored by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and tonight I'm joined by Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, doing good. It's week one.
It's week one, and of course, Adam Kirchen is usually on the show, but he is on assignment again tonight. So we feel, Mukala, you are more than a good guy to step in and talk high school football. So we're excited to have you on, brother, and
Yes, sir.
get a chance to talk some ball with you. But before we do that, we do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Gold Athletics. Coaches, fall coaches, I know you've started your season, but it's never too late to fundraise. If you need a fundraiser, one that fits your program and will help you raise money fast, then Matt Ross and his team have that fundraiser for you. Visit goldathletics.com today for more information. Marketing's experienced team will get you in a program that fits your team, what you're looking to raise for money, and it'll work for your community. So again, if you're looking to raise money, visit goldathletics.com today. Hit up Matt or one of his teammates, and they will get you on the road to making money in no time. All right, gentlemen, it's hard to believe it's week one already of the high school football season for most of New England. Connecticut starts next week, but Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Rhode Island, most of the programs in those states kick off this weekend. I'm going to start here in Massachusetts, and I think this is one of the more intriguing matchups, and our Jared Keene is going to be there for this one. Bishop Feehan at Xaverian. Of course, Xaverian is the defending Division I Super Bowl champion. Bishop Feehan, a program that is no stranger to success through the years. They've had a pretty good run under Brian Pinnabel. They are usually a player in Division II. I love this matchup, guys, because it's a local matchup between two really good Catholic school programs. I think it's going to be a heck of a game. Tyler, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I remember when this game was first kind of teased on Twitter in January or February, and I was like, oh, I hope this is like a legitimate matchup, but that is happening this year. I love it as well. Bishop Feehan, they're not, or their conference schedule isn't the most challenging for a program at that level, a competitive Division II program. So it's good that they're getting out there competing against one of the top 3 to 5 teams in the state in the non-conference. I'm expecting this to be a pretty good game. I think the Bishop Feehan offense can really hang. Owen Mordas, one of the more accomplished quarterbacks returning in the state. So I think that Feehan's going to have a very good year. I just don't know that they're going to be able to beat Xaverian. Xaverian, I think, is a top 3 team entering the season. They're going to be very good defensively, probably have the best defensive line in the state. So I think it will be competitive. I think ultimately the Hawks will pull away in the second half. So I have Xaverian by a couple scores.
Yeah, I think that one thing we can say about Bishop Feehan, they always bring the aggressiveness and they always bring the defense. So they, good defensive coaching staff they have over there, and a program that has a lot of kids on the team. So they should be able to keep up with Xaverian for a little bit, but the Xaverian, I think Xaverian's just too physical, too many skill guys. And they got a good group returning that got a lot of experience. So it might be one of those, as Tyler said, it might be close early, but Xaverian, they might just enforce their will as the game goes on, and that might just wear those guys out. And Xaverian has a big front. That front is really big. So when you have a front like Xaverian, that wears on you for an entire game. You'll see like the defense start tiring out third quarter, fourth quarter, and when you notice the missing tackles, when you notice players missing tackles, that's when you know they're tired, and I think that's when Xaverian will pull away from that game. But early on, it should be like a chess match, but just Xaverian has too much talent.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, McCall. I think that they have too much talent, too. And, you talk about their line play. I mean, defensively, Micah Amity, you got Dominic Funk, who came over from St. Sebastian's. I mean, that's as good a defensive line as you're going to see in Eastern Mass or even the state. And, of course, quarterback Will Wood, he's been patiently waiting for his opportunity. He takes over for Henry Hasselbeck. Look, Henry Hasselbeck was a special talent. I don't think that Will is the same type of quarterback, but I think this Xaverian passing game could be really good. And Tyler, you talk about Owen Mordas. I think that Feehan is going to throw the ball more. Brian Pinnabel wants to line up in 2-back, 3-back formations and pound the ball, but I do think that they're going to air it out more this season. I agree with you, McCall. I think they can hang around for a half, maybe 3/4, but ultimately Zavarian's size, their skill takes over. That's the difference. I'm going to go with Zavarian. Next up, we have King Philip at Walpole. Adam Kirkson's going to be there for that one. Of course, King Philip is the defending Division II state champion. Walpole was a Division III Super Bowl finalist, losing to Milton. Of course, Walpole returns quarterback Noah McKenzie and a bevy of skilled receivers. King Philip returns 5 running backs, and they return a talented back 7 on defense. Last year, KP beat Walpole 31-0 in this game. Walpole got better as the year went on. This has the potential to be a different type of game. Mukal, I'm going to start with you. How do you see this one shaking out?
All right, so if you're one of those teams that you were almost there, you were there last year but couldn't quite get over that hump, these are the type of games you have to kind of show that you could win against tough opponents. And as you said, Noah McKenzie's back. Always great to have a quarterback back. It's always great. They got the skill guys, but like you said, those backs of King Philip, are they gonna be able to stop that running game? When they run the ball, you kill the clock. It keeps the offense off the field. So Walpole has to come in with a very good game plan, and they have to put points up, because King Philip, if they get that lead on you, if they get a 2-score lead on you, now here they come with that running game, and they're bringing in the running backs here and mixing them in and out. So King Philip, are they conditioned to handle Walpole, are they conditioned to handle what King Philip is going to throw at them this Friday? So it's one of those games for Walpole that they're going to try to prove themselves if they want to get back to Gillette.
I'm looking forward to this one as well. I think it will be closer than last year. I would expect Walpole to get on the board this year. But, John, you know as well as anyone that KP is always going to be able to run the ball. They're always going to have solid line play, and they're always going to play good defense. I think that's going to be the case again. It's obviously been a recipe for success in the past. So I think they're among the favorites in Division II. But Division III is wide open, so Walpole can make a run again this year. Noah McKenzie is arguably the most prolific passer returning in the state this year. So he's poised for a big season. He might be held in check a little bit in this game here just because that KP defense is so sound. But, like Mukala said, you're going to be able to rotate these backs, LaPlante, Asarino, King, keep them fresh, and they're really going to be able to wear teams down throughout the year. So with that said, I like KP by a few scores here, but much closer than last year.
And I will recuse myself from this one because I am back on the sidelines at King Philip. So I'm going to be sitting out King Philip predictions this season. But next up, we have Marshfield at St. John's Prep. Mukala, you're going to be there covering that game for us on Friday night. And look, this has been a pretty good game the last couple of years. Of course, Marshfield got to the D2 Super Bowl last year before losing to King Philip. They return a lot of that skill group back. Tor Moss, Charlie Carroll, Davin True. They did have a couple of guys leave the program this offseason, but Chris Aruka is a very good coach, and he returns a talented group. Of course, St. John's Prep, they got to the D1 Super Bowl last year before losing to Zavarian. I'm going to start with you here, Tyler. How do you see this one shaking out? I love this game. I think it's great. A couple of years ago, it was a shootout down at Marshfield. I think it's a really good measuring stick game for both programs.
Yeah, so what's funny with this game is the last 3 years, like Marshfield's dug themselves a really deep hole against St. John's Prep. And 2 years ago, they made a furious comeback, and Jesse O'Fury caught a touchdown in the corner of the end zone to lift Prep to victory. And then 2 years ago, when Prep had the loaded team with O'Fury and Aguero, that state championship team, they kind of beat up on Marshfield. And then again last year, it was St. John's Prep got up by like 20 early, and Marshfield inched their way back and almost won the game. So I think it's going to be closer to the games in 21 and 23. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I think both of these teams are clearly top 7 or 8 teams in the state entering the season. Listen, Marshfield, regardless of who it is, they're going to put a lot of pressure on you defensively. They really play faster than any team in the state, probably faster than any team in New England. It's all about pace. Tormas has a lot of experience. I saw Marshfield play 4 times last year, so I kind of saw his progression throughout the year, starting with that St. John's Prep game. He got much better. He's really in command of Chris Aruka's offense. You mentioned Davin True, who had a huge game last year against CM in the state semifinals. Charlie Carroll, Brady Crowley, two dynamic weapons for them. So I think the Rams are going to be able to score points. I think they're going to keep it close. I would expect this to be a one-possession game, but ultimately I think the Eagles pull it out. Again, similar to KP, this is a team that you know is going to play defense. You know they're going to have good line play, and you know they're going to be able to run the ball. I'm interested to see how the quarterback situation plays out. I've heard a lot of good things about Christopher Vargas throughout the summer. Obviously, it holds the BC offer going into his freshman year. Robillard's an established starter. So I'm interested in seeing how that quarterback situation plays out. But I like St. John's Prep by a score here.
St. John's Prep is like it's always hard to go against those guys over at St. John's Prep. They're one of those teams. They get better as the weeks go on, and I think they got that sour taste in their mouth where losing that state title game, and they definitely want to get back there. So I think they're gonna try to make a statement. We talked about the two quarterbacks of Vargas and Robillard. Good problem to have, but I know Coach St. Pierre is going to have to go with one at some point, but that's a good problem to have. Also, they have a freshman wide receiver who's also going to make a lot of noise. Riley, I always forget his last name, but he's really good. They got a lot of skill guys, and when you talk about St. John's Prep, that offensive line, they have a really big offensive line that I think is going to give these guys a problem. So I think St. John's Prep is going to be a little bit more physical, and I think they're kind of like what I talked about in the earlier games you talked about. I think they're going to wear them out in that second half. So I think I'm going to go with St. John's Prep to win this game just because Coach St. Pierre usually, one thing you're going to get from those guys is physicality and smart play. So I think that's going to be the key in this game.
Yeah, and I think to your point, and you both of you guys have talked about the styles of play here. I think Marshfield's pace could be a problem for St. John's Prep early in this game. But again, it's high school football. And for Marshfield to win this game, they're going to have to match St. John's Prep's physicality. If they can't match their physicality, it's going to be tough to win. So it'll be interesting to see if Marshfield is physical enough up front to hold up against what'll be a really good front seven for St. John's Prep. And, I'm glad you mentioned Vargas, Tyler. I'm curious to see if they play him on varsity this year. Deacon Robillard's an established starting quarterback in the Catholic Conference. They've won games with him. He manages the offense. He knows the offense. He can make plays within the offense. The question is, do they feel Vargas as a freshman is going to be ready to step in and play some snaps for him and open up things in terms of the passing game? That remains to be seen. Knowing Brian St. Pierre and his thought process, I think he's going to want Vargas to develop. I think he trusts Robillard. I think he trusts his seniors. I think he's going to lean on those guys. I think this is going to be a pretty close game. I'm going with the Prep too, but I think this is probably a one-score game. That Marshfield team is really good, and they are certainly good enough to get back to Gillette again this year. They're one of three teams in Division II, King Philip, CM, Marshfield, that are going to be the three favorites in that division. I think that they're going to give St. John's Prep a run for their money. All right, next up,
just want to piggyback off that. Marshfield, they also they played really well in the state championship, in the state title game to a certain point. I think they felt like they let a lot of things, a lot of mishaps happen in that game to let them get away because they were in that game, and then it just some mistakes happened for them. So I'm pretty sure they kind of have that same mentality that St. John's Prep is having. They almost had it, but they felt like they let things slip away from them in that game. So
yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And both of them lost in the Super Bowl, and I'm sure that they have a sour taste in their mouth, and they're going to want to right those wrongs, if you will, this season. All right, next up, we have a game that you're going to be at tomorrow night, Tyler, and that's Apponequet at Middleborough. Apponequet, of course, surprise team last year down on the South Coast. Middleborough established program. Pat Kingman's done a great job there. His teams are always in it year in and year out. Really good early season matchup in the southern part of the state.
So this, I believe this game kicks off the season in Massachusetts. It's a 4 o'clock kickoff because of the mosquitoes. So, so we got an early start down here on the.
And let me tell you something, not to cut you off. I coached semi-pro football for years with the Quincy Granite. We used to play the Middleborough Cobras. The mosquitoes in Middleborough are a different breed. I mean, those things are like this big. So, while I think some of this Triple E stuff is nonsensical, I know how big the mosquitoes are in Middleborough. I've had to dodge them coaching games, so I know.
Yeah, that whole area, Middleborough, Carver, Rochester, a lot of
It's like Mosquito Alley.
It is, right. So I mean, this is going to be a good game. They've been playing each other for a while now. It's a good, regional rivalry, non-conference game. Apponequet's usually tough. They had one of the bigger upsets of the year last year. I think they're the only team to beat Fairhaven towards the end of the regular season. They knocked them off. Brady Jolie's running back, I think, a lot of people are going to get familiar with this year. Like 2,000 yards and 30 touchdowns is possible for this kid this year. He's going to have a major season for the Lakers. So I think this is going to be a pretty good game. Middleborough's losing a lot, but Caden Cariolo, he's a dynamic weapon that's back from last year's team. And the Sachems are always going to be tough. Pat Kingman's one of the better coaches on the South Shore. So I'm expecting this to be a really competitive game. Again, a nice, fun regional rivalry. But I'm going with Apponequet here, maybe a slight upset. Maybe that could be viewed as a slight upset, but I got Apponequet here by one touchdown, call it 26-20.
I'm going to lean to you two on this one because I have no familiarities with both of these programs. So I'm leaning towards you two on this one.
We're going to be leaning on you for the North Shore side of things. So there you go. Yeah, no, I think you mentioned Jolie. I think he's one of the better players in Eastern Mass that a lot of people aren't familiar with. I think he's going to burst onto the scene this year even more than he did last year. And I think people are going to get to know the name, maybe not on par with somebody like a Justin Marks, but I think he's going to be a big part of their offense, and I think he's going to be a productive part of their offense. For me, I think Apponequet's a team that could surprise this year, but Middleborough's tough to pick against, especially at home. Pat Kingman, year in and year out, he's put this program in a place now where they are going to be a player year in and year out for a league title, and they're going to be equipped to make a deep playoff run. I think this is the case once again this year. I'm going to go with the Sachems here, which should be a really good game. All right, next two matchups are in the Bay State Conference, and first up we have the Braintree Womps visiting the Weymouth Wildcats, and which should be a really intriguing matchup here. Of course, Braintree is spearheaded by running back James Curry, who a lot of people are starting to get to know about. He had a big junior season last year, poised to have a big senior year. Weymouth is a program that is back, baby. Mike Donovan, in his first year last year, did a terrific job bringing Weymouth football back to a place where it is competitive. Both programs expect to compete this year in the Bay State League. Mukal, I want to start with you here. Just some thoughts on the Bay State League in this matchup.
So Braintree, they've kind of been climbing. There's like high expectations for Braintree, like, as you said, because of the running back. So, Braintree, they might do some work. But Weymouth, every time I hear about Weymouth, I hear good things about them. I hear, offensively, they're really balanced. Offensively, they don't make too many mistakes. They can put points on the board. So Braintree got to find a way to slow those guys down if they want to come out with the win in this one. But I think I'm going to lean with Weymouth on this one just because I think consistency, they might be the more consistent team out of the two.
So I think these are two sneaky teams, not just in the Bay State, but in Division One. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these teams gets a top 8 seed in Division One once we get to the playoffs. You mentioned James Curry on the other side. Weymouth's got Cam Ayetta. These are two legitimate all-state players. Ayetta, honestly, on both sides, running back and linebacker, and then Curry.
He's one of the best two-way players in the state.
He is, for sure. And Weymouth was a playoff team last year. So that program is definitely trending in the right direction. Braintree beat Milton, right, on Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. And that was, in large part because of Curry, who was dealing with an elbow injury for most of last year. I think he still had 1,800 yards. So that kid's going to have an awesome year. Adams kind of talked about this in some other shows and some other content pieces this year, that there's a lot of good running back talent in the state this year. And that's definitely going to be on full display on Friday night. So I think this is going to be a really competitive game. I think Curry's going to make a play late in the game to push the Womps over the top. Again, I think this could be a close one-score game, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it's going to be a close game. This is a tough one for me. I mean, I've known Mike Donovan for a while now. I have friends on the Braintree staff, so not that that should matter in how I go about picking this game, but I think it's going to be a really close game here. I think James Curry put up monster numbers last year and didn't have a coming out party. I think this is his coming out party. I'm going to lean Braintree here just because I think as long as he stays healthy, he is going to be a force this year. The Bay State League is back to where it was 10, 12 years ago, where you've got 5 or 6 really good teams in the league that are poised to make a run. In Division III last year, you had 2 Bay State League teams in the Super Bowl. So the Bay State League, as I said earlier, I think it's back. I think you got a lot of balance. It's a deep league again. I think these 2 teams could surprise in D1. I'm going to go Braintree here, but in many ways for me, this is a toss-up. All right, next up we have Milton at Needham in what I think it's potentially going to be the best game of the weekend in Eastern Massachusetts for sure. Our Kevin Stone is going to be there for that one. Milton, of course, you're defending Division III Super Bowl champions. They graduated a lot. However, they bring back Salmon at wide receiver. They've got some other skill guys that come back as well. Needham made a run in D1. They graduated some key members from that team, but they also return a lot of talent from that team. This was a great game last year, and I would expect the same. I think this is going to be another terrific matchup between 2 teams that know each other pretty well. Tyler?
Yeah, this is going to be an awesome game. I think this is probably the best matchup on paper this week. Milton loses a lot seemingly every year, but it doesn't matter. Steve Dombrowski just plugs pieces in, and they can have continued success, and they make runs in Division III every single year. And I expect this to be the same again this year. I think, they made it. So they made it 2 years ago. And then like last year, John, you and me and Adam were talking about Milton, and we're like, I don't know how deep of a run they can make this year. They just lost so much from that team that lost to Wakefield. But sure enough, they return, make it back to Gillette, and then they win. So you can't ever discount Steve Dombrowski and what he does there, particularly on the offensive side. Ronan Salmon, one of the best receivers in the state. Harrison Hinkle's an awesome player as well. So Milton does have some skill returning, but they did lose a lot. Needham on the other side is like, I think it's like somehow flying under the radar. This team has 3 FCS commits, which is like, you don't really see that too much at public schools in Massachusetts. So Needham, again, this is a team that's trending in the right direction. They nearly beat Xaverian last year. They were a Division I semifinalist. They could be at least a semifinalist again this year. It's a very talented team. Aiden Williams, arguably the best player returning in the MIA. He's poised for an awesome year on both sides. You mentioned Ayeta and how he's one of the best 2-way players in the state. Aiden Williams is right in that conversation as well. So this should be a really fun game, but I'm going to lead Needham. I think it's close, like 24-21, something like that, but I've got the Rockets.
Last year it was 10-9 was the score, correct?
Yeah. It was an unbelievable game. Milton pulled it out late.
Yeah. Milton quarterback, he transferred it. Am I correct?
He's doing a post grad. Patrick Miller.
Doing a post grad. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So graduated quarterback. Coach was a quarterback, so whoever he puts back in there, he's gonna have them ready to go. But Needham, as you said, they came close against Xaverian. Both of these teams had deep runs. Needham, they were almost there, but you couldn't quite get it. So I'm sure they're coming into this season with a little extra pep in their step because they know who they have returning and just how far they got last year. So, I mean, anything's better than 10. You guys said 10-9 was the score last year in a great game. So I'm sure both teams are going to want to put up more points than that. So I think I'm going to lean towards Needham this one for this one. I think I'm going to lean Needham on this one just because, as you said, they got some players coming back that are really, really good. And quarterback, not too sure the quarterback situation with Milton. So I'm just going to lean with the team that a little more firepower.
After the Super Bowl last year, Steve Dombrowski busted my chops about picking against them. And, he reminded me that I picked against them going into the week of the Super Bowl. Well, Listen, Dembo, you and I have been friends for a long time, man. I think the world of you. I think you're one of the best coaches in the state. I was ecstatic for you to see you win that Super Bowl last year, my friend. But I'm going to pick Needham here. I think Needham is that one public school program that is positioned to potentially make a run like Franklin did a couple of years ago, where they could find themselves in a sectional final and one game away from the Super Bowl. I think that they're that type of team. I think, you talk about Aiden Williams, you talk about their line play, they're well coached. I think it's going to be another close game because I never bet against the Steve Dombrowski team in terms of competitiveness. They're going to be right there with them. But I think in the end, this is a senior-laden Needham team that is building off of last year's momentum. And I think it's going to be enough for them to make a run in Division I. I think it starts with a close win against Milton. They flipped the script after last year's 10-9 game. All right, next up, we're back on the South Coast here. Abington at Duxbury. For the first time in 50 years, Jim Kelleher is not going to be roaming the sidelines at Abington. Longtime assistant coach O'Reilly takes over there. They're taking on the defending Division IV state champions, Duxbury. It's been quiet on the Western Front here with Duxbury. Usually we hear a lot about last year was Alex Barlow and he was the star and their line play. We haven't heard a lot about him. I mean, we're hearing about Trevor Jones, but outside of him, it's been kind of a quiet offseason when it comes to Duxbury hype. All that being said, it's Duxbury. They're going to be amongst the favorites in D4. They're going to be in it. When the dust settles, they could find themselves back at Gillette yet again. I think when I look at this matchup, though, it's a contrast in styles. You got Abington, traditional wing tee program versus a spread athlete program at Duxbury. Nonetheless, I think this is going to be a pretty fun game. Mukal, I'm going to start with you here. Just some thoughts on this one.
So a fun fact, I actually have 2 cousins on the coaching staff at Abington.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah. And from what they told me, they told me they got a lot of young guys who are going to be really good. They're not sure if they're going to take that leap this year, but they're going to get a lot of time on the field to make some progress this year. So they're excited for what they have. Duxbury. Anytime I hear about them, I always hear about line play. They always have the line play, and line play can cancel out a lot of things. So a young Abington team versus a team that's always primed and is always ready to play, and they're always in the conversation for a state championship. So I think I'm gonna lean towards Duxbury in this one. Sorry to my cousins, but that experience that Duxbury has, and Duxbury is one of those teams you just can't go against or you can't count out, because even they might go under the radar, but the product they put on the field is always top notch.
Again, like when I'm looking like early on and like late spring, call it, when I'm looking for the schedules for the upcoming fall, this one caught my eye. I originally thought this was a scrimmage, so I'm happy that they're playing each other. I enjoy these South Shore games where it's the Patriot League against the South Shore League. I like those sort of crossovers. There's another big one in a few weeks between Scituate and Norwell. So these are some fascinating matchups. Abington, actually, McCullough, I saw you there last year when they were upset by Stoneham. Abington was a 2 seed, and they were upset by Stoneham in the first round of the playoffs, and that was clearly disappointing. So I think the returning seniors are going to come into this year with a chip on the shoulder. Riley's back at quarterback, the coach's son. So the Green Wave, listen, it's always a tough team. They're going to be tough again this year. They're going to be a factor in Division VI, but I can't bet against Duxbury. I just can't do that right now. Trevor Jones, again, this is an all-state caliber kid. He's going to put up big numbers in that offense. They always have a prolific offense, and he's an all-state caliber defensive back as well. So they aren't returning nearly as much as they have the last few years, but still that tradition matters. Landolfi's an excellent coach. They're well coached on both sides of the ball. So I've got the Dragons here by a couple scores, 28-14.
Yeah, I think that this will be a closer game than that, in my opinion. Look, I think one of the advantages that Abington is going to have is that Coach Riley's been a part of it. He's been on the staff. He knows how things work there. He understands the systems. He can teach them. He can coach to them. So that's going to matter. But I think the one thing with Abington is year in and year out, this is a program that finds a way to compete because they do have tough kids and they do grow up playing in that wing T system and they do grow up playing in that defensive system. And so there's not a steep learning curve when they get to the high school. And I think ultimately that's going to enable this program to continue to compete despite Coach Kelleher retiring. In the end, I do think Duxbury is slightly better. And I think you make a great point, Tyler, about Trevor Jones. I think he's going to be one of the better players in the state. I think that proves to be the difference. But this Abington team is a team that can make another run and could potentially end up a top 4 seed again as well. All right, next up we have Barnstable at Bridgewater Raynham. Story here, of course, is former Franklin coach Ian Bain taking over at Bridgewater Raynham. Of course, BR is a program with a long history and a proud tradition under Dan Buron. They're looking to get back to that. Barnstable is a program. Ross Jatkola has done a great job down there. He's really turned that program into the preeminent program down the Cape. They're usually a player in Division II. Both of these schools are D2 schools. This is a pretty good matchup on paper, and I think when you look at this matchup, I think that these teams are also pretty evenly matched. I would give the experience edge to Barnstable, and I think that they probably are a little bit more skilled, but generally speaking, I think that these two programs are very similar. Tyler?
Yeah, I agree that they are very similar, and I think they're going to be 2 playoff teams in Division II this year. And I think Bridgewater Raynham will rebound, and that's just how much respect I have for Ian Bain and what he built at Franklin. Like, they were a consistent contender in Division I under Ian Bain, and I think he's going to get Bridgewater Raynham back to the winning ways. Maybe not in like the state championship conversation yet, but I think they're going to be back in the playoff mix this year. Barnstable, again, you mentioned it, John. Ross Jatkola has built a great program there. They always have a hard, challenging schedule. This year is no different. So I think Barnstable's going to take a little time to get up to speed, though, where they have been the last couple of years. Chevy Shakespeare transferred out. Dejardo France, he graduated. They lost a lot of talent from these last couple of years, where they've had some successful teams, including last year's semifinal team. So I think that kind of inexperience on the Barnstable side, plus the just the emotion of it being Ian Bain's first game, I slightly give the edge to the Trojans. I think this is going to be a very competitive game. I think it's going to be more low scoring than I think what people expect from a Barnstable game, something like 21-14, but I'm going to lean with the Trojans here.
Yeah, this game for me is all about adjustments for both programs. I said Bridgewater adjusting under a new head coach, so just how much the players have a full understanding of his system and what he wants to do. Because sometimes it doesn't click right away. It might take like a couple games, but we'll find out in like the first quarter. So just how much they got it, and then Barnstable with the transition of graduating players, so a lot of new guys in new roles, getting full-time varsity minutes. Some guys that got partial varsity time on the field, and other getting more varsity time on the field. Just them adjusting to having their roles increase. So I think I'm gonna go with Bridgewater on this one. I think I'm gonna go with Bridgewater on this one, just because there's a little more turnover with Barnstable right now, so I think I'm gonna lean towards Bridgewater.
Yeah, I think both of you guys make a great point about the roster turnover with Barnstable, and it's going to take them some time to get going. Both of these teams are spread teams. They're going to want to throw the football, get their athletes in space. I think that BR is probably a little, despite the fact that they've got a lot of young guys playing, and from what we've heard coming out of there, that the staff feels it's going to take them some time to get going and to get up to speed in Ian Bain's offense. I think that they are probably a little further ahead, slightly further ahead. I'm going to lean BR here, but again, I'm going to pull a fence sitting here and say that this is a toss-up game. Could go either way. I'm leaning BR, but something tells me that you could go either way with this one, and you could be right. Next up, we have Foxborough at Scituate in a matchup of the defending Division V state champion Foxborough against a team in Scituate that's perceived by many to be a favorite in D4. Mukala, I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Situate. I've heard they're gonna make a lot of noise this season just with who they have coming back in the system. But Foxborough, I like consistency. I like the consistent programs. I think Foxborough they might start this one off with a bang. Try to get back to a state title run. So I think I'm gonna lean with Foxborough on this one.
Yeah, so I'll be there Friday night. I'm looking forward to this one. So these are my preseason pick in Division 5 and in Division 4 to win it all. I think Foxborough is going to go back to back. They have a lot of key players returning from last year, led by Ben Angelini. It's always tough as you know, John, to bet against the Martinellis and what they've got going on there. But I think Situate is very explosive. You know, Herb Devine really wants to throw the ball around. So I think quarterback play could be not an issue, but it's a question mark turning or as we get into the new season. So it could take a while for the offense to really start clicking. With that said, though, they still have so much skill. They have some offensive line pieces back too. Lawson Foley, very good dynamic receiver. Willie Robinson returning in the backfield. And they have the home field advantage. So I'm going to lean towards the Sailors here in this one. I think it's something like 28-21. Going to be a really competitive game. As I said, I think these are two teams that are favorites in their respective divisions. I think they're probably top 15 teams in the state at this point, but I lead Situate.
Yeah, you know, Foxborough returns a lot. And they do graduate Brandon Mazinkus, O'Grady, Lincoln Moore, two of the best players in the state last year at their respective positions. And those are two very good players that are irreplaceable. They don't have guys on that roster that are going to replace those two guys from a production standpoint. But the rest of that team is back, and this is a senior-laden team. And when you look at the composition of Division 5, you look at the lay of the land, they're the best team in D5. And I'm with you, Tyler. I think they should be favored to go back to Gillette, win, and go back-to-back, although anything can happen. You know, when you look at our good friend Herb Devine, Situate Sailors, you know, you mentioned Robinson in the backfield, Lawson Foley at receiver. He's going to create matchup problems. Can they get consistent enough quarterback play to win enough games to make that run and get back to Gillette? They've been a team that's been there before the last few years. When I look at this matchup, yeah, for Foxborough, you got to get on the bus and you got to go down there. It's kind of unfamiliar territory. But this Foxborough team has a lot of experience. You got Marcus Sella back at quarterback. You mentioned Angelini in the backfield, Gordon out at wide receiver. This is a really good football team. They're also big up front. I think this is going to be a fun game. I could see this being a high-scoring game, but I'm leaning Foxborough here. Don't kill me, Herb. Please don't. We still love you, man. But I'm leaning Foxborough here just because I think that this team, a lot of what they did last year and a lot of the production from last year is back, and I think they're going to be tough to beat. Now, they play a really good schedule. They go to Situate. They're going to play KP in a few weeks. They're going to play Lincoln Sudbury. They play Walpole. They play a really good schedule, Foxborough. So they certainly have the talent to compete in all those games and potentially win them. All right, next up we have Franklin at Central Catholic. Of course, Todd Kiley takes over at Franklin for Ian Bain. Kiley won 3 Super Bowls at Holliston during his almost 20-year tenure at the school. For Central Catholic, you know, this is, I don't want to say it's a rebuild, but for Coach Sexton, that they need to turn the page here. They have a new quarterback. They're going to have a lot of new faces. But after an up-and-down season last year, the Red Raiders are poised to get back to a place where they're a contender in Division I and a program that we're talking about. Mukal, I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on Central Catholic Franklin.
And this is another big matchup for first game of the season too. Franklin, you know, made a run, and I think they lost to Andover out there going in the Merrimack region, losing in the playoff game to Andover. New coach, but always full of talent. Central Catholic, yeah, they've been Division I contenders. You know, they're year in, year out. Last year they didn't make the postseason, but they had talent. Things just didn't, you know, go well for them this year. So health, they got to stay healthy. They got to have their guys stay healthy. And I'm sure a lot of those guys are probably not too happy about not making the playoffs that last season. So I'm sure they're coming in with trying to make the playoffs and restore order with Central Catholic and having them be contenders. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna go to this game just to check it out. I think Central Catholic. I think I'm gonna go with Central Catholic just because of the home field.
Yeah, I think Central Catholic will rebound a little bit this year. So Central Catholic, they played many more younger kids, especially freshmen, than they usually play last year. Kids like Drew O'Keefe and Brian Ratana Waller, like these are really good players. They're young players. They're only sophomores now, but they're only going to continue to grow and develop. I think the Raiders, again, I think they will bounce back. I don't think they're going to be quite in the state title mix yet. But this is honestly, there's like a lot of question marks around both of these teams, and they've had a lot of success recently, and they've both undergone recent coaching changes. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think Central Catholic wins. I just think they're more talented at this point in time. But I wouldn't be surprised if Franklin pulled this out. It's a brutal, first road trip here for Todd Kiley in his first game at Franklin, but I lean Central Catholic here.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is tough to go up to Lawrence and to take on Central Catholic, a program that's been perennially pretty good. Franklin is going through a little bit of a I don't want to say a rebuild here, but a retool. They graduated a lot of skill talent from the last 2 years. They've graduated a lot of guys that were a big part of their success under Ian Bain, and they've got some good young talent coming up. But this is a tough road trip for me. I think Franklin is going to get better as the year goes on, as they get acclimated to Coach Kiley and this staff, and it's a very good staff, a veteran staff that was with him at Holliston. But that's going to take some time. I think Central Catholic showed at the end of last season they got better as the year went on, and I think they build off of that. I think this is a good game, but I think ultimately Central Catholic at home does enough to pull it off and win by 7. But I do think Franklin plays a pretty good schedule. They got Central Catholic, they got Wachusett, they got Duxbury, they got Brockton. They're going to get better as the year goes on, but I think at this stage of the game, Central Catholic might be slightly better. All right, next up we have North Attleboro at Lynn Classical, and this is a game that, when you look at it on paper, of course, you look at North, they bring back Chase Frizzoli, they bring back Bannon at running back and linebacker. They've got Kaiser out at wide receiver. This is a good team. Mike Strachan, good staff. They should be a player in the Hockomock League in the Davenport Division and in Division III. And, of course, Lynn Classical, they've been a program that has improved steadily the last few years. McCall, I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on this one.
Oh, man, Lynn Classical, you graduating record-setting quarterback, graduating a record-setting receiver, graduated their second-best receiver. Lot of offensive talent gone, but they got a lot of offensive talent coming in. I checked out their scrimmage against Saugus 2 weeks ago, and Tyron Hunt, he's back healthy. He was running like he didn't miss a beat. He was running guys over. He had the breakaway speed. I think he had a 60-yard touchdown run in that game, in that scrimmage. And Ryan Booth is going to be their starting quarterback. He was playing receiver last year. Now they thrust him into the quarterback position, and he looked comfortable back there. He was making sound decisions. He didn't hold the ball too long. He got it out quick, and that's one thing Coach Vaughn likes to do. He likes to get the ball out of his quarterback's hands quick. But from what he told me, they're going to be a heavy running game. They're going to be a heavy run team this year, and just because they're playing a lot of young guys this season, so he wants to emphasize the run, but. They got skill players. They got receivers. They got a couple receivers that I think will really make some noise this season. And I think we'll see that in the later part of the season. Because I think the first couple games, probably the whole month of September, we're gonna see a heavy dose of the classical running game. So that's with them. And North Attleboro, that's another team. They're all coming out the Hockomock League, one of the best leagues in the state. They're gonna be physical. They're gonna run the ball. They got playmakers. So this might be a matchup of similar styles, but I think, I'm going biased. I'm going with Classical just because of my bias, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a close game. But from what I saw from Classical during their scrimmage.
Yeah, McCall, you mentioned Tyron Hunt. I think he's one of the more underrated backs in the state. Again, another back returning in the state who's had a ton of production in the past. But you mentioned all those losses that Classical had to graduation. I think that's going to be the key here. I just think North is more experienced right now. For Soli's a 4-year starter at quarterback. Uh, Ryan Bannon's an outstanding linebacker. I almost called him Tyler Bannon. So Ryan Bannon's an all-state level linebacker. You mentioned Kaiser. This team has a lot of returning pieces. They're going to be a factor. They're going to be a factor in the Division III race. Mike Strachan's a great coach. North's obviously got the tradition here as well. I think North wins this game, but it's a fun non-league opening week battle.
Yeah, I love this matchup. It's one of the more intriguing matchups of the weekend in Massachusetts. I'm going to lean North here too, just because of that experience factor. I think that Classical's well coached. I think they're going to be able to run the football and make some plays in the passing game. But I do think that if North Attleboro decides to go 2 tight ends, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, 3 backs, and starts running Bannon downhill and hits a couple of those play action shots with Fasoli, I think that could be the difference. I think this is going to be a good game. But I think that North Attleboro is the better team here because of their experience edge.
Yeah.
I'm going to lean Red Rocketeers here, which should be a good game. I mean, it's not going to be easy getting on a bus and going up to Lynn Classical to play this game. It's uncharted territory for North, so they will have their hands full. And Coach Vaughn is, to me, one of the better coaches at Eastern Mass. He gets a lot out of his kids. And I actually briefly coached him when he played for us with the Quincy Granite. I've been around him. I know what kind of guy he is and the kind of coach he is. And he's tremendous. So I think it's going to be a really good game. All right, next up we have Mansfield at Everett in a matchup that, oddly enough, these two teams played in 2018, and that was Mike Sainer-Strill's senior year. Of course, he's with the Washington Commanders now. But when you look at this matchup on paper, it's two traditional powers here. This they're not what they used to be, but this has a chance to be a pretty good game. Tyler, I'm going to start with you.
It should definitely be a good game. Yeah, they've played in the past. 2 traditional powers. Everett's, of course, undergone some turnover since DiBiase left. Everett's been down. Of course, last year the storyline was them missing out on the playoffs, being a 1-loss team and missing out. Only lost to eventual state champions of Erie, and so they went out and they're challenging themselves more this offseason. They got BCI, they got Xaverian, Mansfield, Taunton, Brockton. So it's a much more challenging schedule for the Tide this year. It should be a really competitive game. I mean, I think this is one of the games that I had one of the more like a difficulty picking this week. I think Everett has a little bit more returning. But again, 2 proud programs. This should be a really competitive game. But I give the slight edge to Everett.
And I think Coach Flores understood, coming into this season, he had to beef up that schedule and challenge himself. Because when I talked to him during this the season finale, that I think that was one of the things he said he's going to make sure he puts his team in a position where they don't have to be on the outside looking in, and this schedule is definitely going to help them. And traditional power, they're not devoid of talent. There's talent there. There's a talent all over there. So it's just trying to get. I know they're trying to get that Everett football back to how they was. It hasn't been quite the same for a while, but it's not because of lack of talent. They got the talent there. So we'll see what this schedule is. Is definitely a good start for those guys. So home opener, you got Mansfield coming in, another team, high power team. Mansfield could put up a lot of points on them, but this might be one of those. This might be one of them shootouts. I think this might be one of them shootouts. But I think just because Everett's home, I think they might have the edge because they're home.
Yeah, I think Everett, people are going to take them for granted. They fly under the radar. And you mentioned Coach Flores beefing up the schedule. I thought he did a terrific job. I love their schedule. They're going to be playing in a lot of big games. I think when you look at this Mansfield team, though, that they're going to be playing a lot of young guys, specifically on offense. It's going to be a junior laden team offensively. I think up front they're going to be senior laden. But they've got some good pieces coming back up front. They've got some guys that have played, that have experience, that are going to help them. But I think ultimately going on the road, playing an Everett team that I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to lean Everett here, but this is another one of those. Here I go again, sounding like John Kerry. This is another one of those toss-up games. I'm sitting on the fence, but I'm leaning Everett here. I think ultimately they are a little bit better, and I think that experience proves to be the difference. All right, next up we have Marblehead at Bishop Fenwick. Of course, Bishop Fenwick could not qualify for the Division 5 playoffs last year. They can this year. Marblehead, Jim Rudloff does a terrific job year in and year out, always runs a good program. They always get good quarterback play. McCall, I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, Marblehead, just a few years ago, they won it all. Just a few years ago. I think last year they had some injuries on the roster last year that kind of hampered them throughout the season. Bishop Fenwick, talk about a group that really has something to prove. I know those guys that are coming back were really irked that they couldn't play in the postseason. They had a good year last year. They beat their rival St. Mary's. They had a winning record, but everything that happened, so they couldn't really go into postseason play. So you're looking at a program with a lot of players that really have a lot to prove, and they might want to just have that. We want to stick it to the people that did this to us, through no fault of our own, other people, but the people that put this sanction on us for making it. So it might be one of those teams that just come out on fire. So I think I'm gonna lean towards Bishop Fenwick in this one, just because of all the stuff that happened last year. They might use that. They're probably gonna use that as fuel going into this season, knowing that they'll be able to play in the postseason.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Fenwick's going to have a massive chip on their shoulder this year. I would expect them to be among the best teams in Division 5, kind of like that next tier down after Foxborough, kind of who settles in as those next 2, 3, 4 best teams after that in Division 5. So I think the Crusaders are, seeking vengeance this year. I think they'll have a good year. Marblehead's an interesting team. Like I saw them play last year. It was another playoff upset. They went down to Middleborough, knocked them off in the first round. They were playing multiple quarterbacks, so it'll be interesting to see if they've settled on one going into this season. Crew Monaco is a good skill player for them. This is going to be a really competitive game, I think. I think it's going to be low scoring. I lean Magicians, something like 14-10, 17-14, something like that. But I like Marblehead.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Marblehead here, too. I think that Bishop Fenwick, if they brought back a lot of the skill that they had last year, I agree. I think that they would be well positioned to make a run in D5. I still think they will, but I think in the end, I agree with you that this is going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to lean Marblehead here as well. All right, next up, we go down the Cape. Mashpee at Dennis Yarmouth. The quarterback matchup here is fantastic. You got Dennis Yarmouth's Jaden Barber against Dominic Matadeo from Mashpee. Mashpee, of course, was a perennial visitor to Gillette Stadium a few years ago, but Matt Trivieri has a squad that he likes here. I think this is one of the better matchups of the weekend down the Cape. Tyler?
Yeah, this is an awesome game, and they've been playing each other for a couple years now, and I hope it continues. With DY and the Cape and Islands League, Mashpee and the South Shore League, it's a non-conference game, but these are two of the better teams on the Cape this year. It should be a fun game, and in Mashpee, we can just expect them to be a perennial contender in Division 7. And Dennis Yarmouth's not that far removed from a state championship of their own. Like, this is a team that has a lot of tradition. And you mentioned Jaden Barber, and they have a lot of skill back. It's not just Barber; he has a lot of receivers returning as well. And they've been playing multiple years, 3-4 years, a lot of these kids. So they have a lot of that varsity experience. Mashpee returns a lot from last year, too. Mashpee's a team that was really hampered by injuries last year. They were a good team. I saw them play against Cohasset. Certainly not the result they wanted in that one, but they were really banged up. They're going into the year healthy. Coach Matt Treveri always gets the most out of his group. His son, Ryan Treveri, is poised for a big year as a slot receiver. So I think this is going to be an awesome matchup. I think a lot of points are going to be scored in this one. I think this is kind of going to be the nature of all of the Dennis Yarmouth games this year. So with that said, I like the Dolphins here. I think Jaden Barber makes a play late in the game to propel the Dolphins, let's say 35-30 DY.
These are non-conference games that people love. These are like the non-conference games that help you down the line as far as ranking wise, and also as far as confidence wise when you going against teams like these. But I think I'm gonna lean towards Dennis Yarmouth. I think they might. I think they might just make a little bit more plays in this one. It might like. I agree with Tyler on the score, but I think it might be one of those. Might be like 35, 28, 21, 28 type of games.
Yeah, and last year DY beat Mashpee 40-38. So you're both on to something here with the score. I think it is going to be a shootout too. I'm going to lean DY here, but if Mashpee can run the football and play a little bit of keep away, make some big plays off play action down the field, they can win this game. Ultimately, if it ends up becoming a shootout, I think that type of game favors DY a little bit. I think we all agree that this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I'm going with DY as well. All right, next up, we go back to the North Shore. Melrose at Peabody. McCall, I'm going to start with you there. Just some thoughts on this one. Peabody, Coach Betancourt, that's been a pretty good program here the last couple of years, hoping to keep it going. Of course, Coach Morris has been at Melrose for a long time, and Melrose is a player year in and year out in Division IV and in the playoffs. Some thoughts on this one?
Peabody, they transfer, they graduate guys, and then other guys just step in. I mean, losing Eli Batista, I mean that's big. You know, all the things he done. But I think they're gonna be. I think Peabody, as you said, they're gonna be just fine. I think the ship's gonna keep on rolling. I think they're gonna be hard to stop on offense. They're gonna put up a lot of points. So I think Peabody's gonna get this one. They're just too much of a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a team that's kind of we've talked about the big three in Division II with CM and KP and Marshfield, and it's like I think Fian and Peabody I think are kind of those next two teams in line there. After that top three teams that are going to be vying for a semifinal berth this year in Division II. Peabody they've lost a lot, but they do return a lot. Alex Silva's a good player. They have some more key pieces back. I think the Tanners have really rebounded as a program recently, and I think they're going to continue that this year. They're going to have another playoff season. I think Melrose will be better this year than they have been, not quite to that state championship level that we've seen recently from Tim Morris's squad, but I think Melrose is always a tough out. I'm going to go with Peabody in this one, though, and I think the Tanners aren't, John, you've mentioned a couple times throughout this episode where teams aren't necessarily rebuilding but retooling. I think it's going to be a retooling effort in Peabody. Maybe not as quite as good as they were last year, but still a very competitive playoff team at D2.
Yeah, I think they'll be competitive in D2 as well. I think this is going to be a really good game. I'm not sure Melrose is who they used to be, but Peabody's a program that has been on the rise the last couple of years. I see that continuing despite the graduation of some key players from the last two teams. I think this is going to be another one of those close games, but I'm going to lean Peabody here. Next up, we have Methuen at Lincoln Sudbury. Of course, Lincoln Sudbury coaching change. Jim Gerard is out. Methuen graduates Drew Eason, but brings back his brother Shane Eason. You know, when you look at this matchup last year, LS beat Methuen. They shocked them. I think this is one of those things where when you look at this matchup, Methuen has a lot to prove. I think this has a chance to be a pretty good game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. And last year was a good game, and it was the upset, and it was part of that weird opening season slate last year where the game started on Friday and finished on Saturday. I think in some cases Sunday, with that lightning that came through the state last year on the opening weekend. So that was kind of just like a strange opening game, but I think Lincoln Sudbury really surprised a lot of people, including the Methuen team. But I wouldn't expect Methuen to really take a big downturn this year. I know everyone's going to say Drew Eason's gone, but Tom Ryan's really built something special there. Shane Eason's one of the more dynamic players in the state entering this season. I think Methuen's still going to be a player in Division I. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they not only make the playoffs, but win a game or two once they get there. This is a program that's, they're really on the upswing here. Prolific offense. They have a ton of skill back, even minus Drew Eason. So I like Methuen here. I just think they have too much experience, too much skill.
Yeah, Shane Eason is just I don't even know the words to describe him. He is one hell of a football player, and he's not only him. They got other guys. I believe Makai Ledmanson, I believe is his name. He's back there too, kind of like a running back, wide receiver. He did a little bit both. He's another playmaker that they have. And one thing Methuen does, Methuen will put the points up. They will put the points up. They'll get a lot of yards. But yeah, I just like Shane Eason. I think he's gonna be the catalyst for this team. I think he's gonna. Those boys will be ready to play, knowing what happened last year. I think they'll definitely be ready to play.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Coach McKay is going to get it going at LS again, but it's going to take some time. I think Methuen is there now. As long as they get good quarterback play, the rest of the skill is there. Headlined by Easton, of course. He'll be the difference. I like Methuen in what should be a good game for a half, but I think ultimately Cream will rise and Methuen will pull away. Next up, we have Salem at Danvers. McCall, I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on this North Shore matchup.
Salem, they've graduated a lot. They graduated a lot of their offense. The quarterback graduated, receivers graduated, but they have Quinn Rocker Ryan. He's back there. He was a big time playmaker for them. He's gonna get a lot more. He's gonna get a lot more offensive responsibilities, and he's one of those guys. He could break off a big play just like that. You know, the offense might be stagnant for a while, and boom, he gets you for a 70-yard touchdown. So. Danvers, they lost a couple guys too. I just think Salem has a little more offensive firepower than Danvers. I think Salem is going to come out with this one.
Yeah, awesome North Shore matchup. Salem did lose a lot. You mentioned Quinn Rocker Ryan. He's going to have a big year this year for Salem. Danvers, they lost some pieces as well. Danvers was, I think, better than a lot of people expected last year. They nearly knocked off Hanover in the state semifinals when everyone seemed to have had Foxborough and Hanover penciled in as the two D5 finalists last year. So Danvers is a program that's really they've played a lot of competitive games. They've have playoff experience these last few years. I think that's going to benefit them. I think Salem just lost a little too much, so I lean with Falcons here.
Yeah, I think Salem did graduate a lot, and despite having a couple of key players back, I think Danvers is a little bit more experienced. I think that they're a team that people need to keep an eye on in D5. They're certainly good enough to make a run, and their team to watch is a potential threat to Foxborough. I think that this will be a really good game, but in the end, I think Danvers is a little bit better, and I think they have the slight advantage. I like Danvers in this one. Next up, we're going to go to Central Mass, Shrewsbury at Hudson. Really good matchup on paper here. Shrewsbury, good program. They've been pretty good the last couple of years. Hudson, of course, is a perennial contender in Division 6. Jake Attaway is back at quarterback there. He makes that engine run for the Hawks. Just some thoughts on this matchup, Tyler. I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, Hudson's a fun team. So, like, if I had to pick a Division 6 state championship matchup right now, I would say Fairhaven versus Hudson. They met in the semifinals last year.
That would
Division
be a great
6.
matchup.
Fairhaven won that game.
Styles.
Yeah, definitely. It would be a great matchup. And Hudson really struggled like everyone else against the Fairhaven running game last year. But Jake Attaway, like, once he got going, he was a little rusty, a little shaky in the first quarter. But once he got going, like, I watched games from the sideline, and like the Fairhaven sideline was just in awe of some of the plays Jake Attaway is making. And it's not just him. They have a lot of pieces back. I think Hudson's really going to make a run this year. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they made it back to Gillette or if they came out on top in Division 6. I like these, and similar to Fairhaven, like they're playing a much bigger school. Like next week, Fairhaven's going to play BCI. This week, Hudson is getting D1 Shrewsbury. So it's a great way to challenge yourself in the opening weekend. They're not going to be as big as Shrewsbury on the line, but I think they have more skill. And I'm going with the Hawks here. I don't know if it's necessarily an upset, but just based on school size, it's, I think it is going to be surprise some people, catch people off guard when they see a Division 6 team competing with a Division 1 team. I like Hudson here. I think Attaway is just going to make plays all season long, and it starts Friday night.
I like offense. Hudson got a lot of offense. That's my quick take on that. I'm gonna lean towards Hudson on this one.
Yeah, I think this will be a pretty good game. I think it'll be a pretty even matchup. I think if Shrewsbury's going to win this game, they're going to have to win the line of scrimmage. That's where they will have an advantage. But there's no doubt that with Jake Attaway in that skill group, Hudson can make game-changing plays in a hurry. And I think that's going to be the difference here. I think that this game will be close throughout the first three quarters and into the fourth quarter. But I think Hudson at home pulls away. And look, enrollment matters to a degree because you have more bodies potentially, but talent's talent. And at the end of the day, enrollment doesn't factor into talent. Talent cancels out enrollment in many ways. And I think ultimately this Hudson skill group is one of the better ones in the state. I think they'll be the difference in this one. Stay in Central Mass for the next two matchups as well. Real quick, we got St. John Shrewsbury at Leominster. For me, fellas, when I look at this matchup, one name comes to mind: Osiris Lopez, one of the top quarterbacks in the state. I think he could potentially. I got to see St. John Shrewsbury on Friday. They've got some good skill. They're young. Their freshman team is loaded. They're going to be good in the next couple of years, but I'm not sure Coach Vassar's squad is there quite yet. I lean Leominster here. I think Devin Gates is a pretty good team, and I think Osiris Lopez is ready to really put his stamp on this season in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I agree. I think Osiris Lopez and Noah McKenzie are arguably the two best quarterbacks returning in the MIA. Lopez is going to have a huge year. I think, listen, they're going to be a playoff team. I think. I don't know quite how far they'll go, but this is a classic Central Mass rivalry. It's one of the better rivalries in the state. But I think Leominster has a little bit too much firepower, led by Lopez. So I got the Blue Devils here.
Yeah, one of the players from Shrewsbury actually contacted me about this game too the other day. They said it's going to be a big one. So Stephen the Tim, I saw him at the conference showcase. He opened some eyes at receiver during that showcase. So he's going to have some opportunities to make plays. But yeah, as you said, I think Leominster might just have a little more edge over Shrewsbury. So I think Leominster it'll probably be close, but I think they'll pull away and probably win this one by 2 scores.
Yeah, I think St. John Shrewsbury is coming. I think that they're going to get there under Coach Vassar. I think he's a terrific guy, terrific coach. But I think right now I give Leominster the slight edge here. And I'm with you, Tyler. I think Lopez is poised for a big year. Next up, we have a pretty intriguing matchup here. Wachusett at Wayland. I like this matchup a lot. I think it's one of the more interesting matchups of this weekend. Of course, Wayland is home to Max Dressens, one of the best backs in the league. He recently committed to Bucknell. This has a chance to be a pretty good game. Wachusett has been one of the better programs in Central Mass in recent years under Coach Dobzinski. I think this is a fun game. I think it's a toss-up. It could go either way. What do you guys think, Tyler?
Yeah, I think Wayland's going to be a factor this year. I think it's a team that's kind of flying under the radar. Adam and I have discussed this a lot throughout the offseason. Like, they're a legitimate top 35 to 40 team at this point in the season. You mentioned Dressens. He's one of the best running backs in the state. Again, another really prolific running back returning. I like what Wachusett has done recently with their schedule. They've played more Eastern Mass teams. They're scheduling tough opponents to prepare themselves for the playoffs. But with that said, I like Wayland in this one. It'll be competitive throughout, I think. But I think Dressens is really going to, set the stage for what's to come for Wayland football this year.
Yeah, it's always great when programs schedule tough opponents. Especially opponents they don't get to normally see. So it's a good job on Wachusett for doing that. But I think the running game for Wayland is going to be the difference maker in this one. If they don't stop the back, they're not going to have a chance to win. So they got to find a way to contain Wayland's running back. So I think I'm gonna lean with Wayland on this one.
All right, next up we're gonna go back to the North Shore. We got Winthrop versus Stoneham. I'm gonna start with you, Macaulay. Your thoughts on this matchup?
Stoneham. A lot of those guys, they feel like they got a state championship caliber team. Stoneham, they were very excited after that win over Abington. They thought a lot of people didn't pick them to win that game, so they went in that one with a lot of chip on their shoulder. Wayland with that running game of theirs is always deadly. I said, wait a minute. Stoneham with that running game of theirs is always deadly. So I seen the talent for them. They got guys coming back, so I think Stoneham's gonna come out and probably control this game.
Yeah, these are two teams that really want to rely on the running game. They both have some nice returning pieces. This is really a true toss-up. Again, this is a difficult one to pick. Mm-hmm. I lean Stoneham here. I think it's going to be a competitive game, something like 20-14 in that range. Sean Kilty's back. Ben Bruno's back for Stoneham. The Spartans, listen, both of these teams actually are going to be factors in Division 6 race. So it's a good kind of, a good, what's the word I'm looking for here? A good preview.
Measuring stick.
A good measuring stick, right.
Yeah.
A good measuring stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Litmus test.
Litmus test or measuring stick. Those are the two phrases I was looking for there. So this is a great measuring stick for both teams. And week one is they both expect to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pretty good matchup. I'd keep an eye on Nick Capuccio for Winthrop. Pretty good athlete, good player. Winthrop could surprise people. Remember now, we're talking about a program. The Vikings have a lot of tradition. They've been there before. I think this is going to be a good matchup. I'm going to lean Stoneham here. That Spartan running game is tough to stop, but Winthrop's going to be able to run the football and control the pace themselves as well. So I think this should be a pretty good matchup. Next up, we have Milford at Westfield. This is a pretty intriguing matchup between an Eastern Mass border Eastern Central Mass program in Milford going out to take on a very good Westfield program under the direction of Coach Robert Parent. I think this is an intriguing matchup. Milford's numbers are down, but you bring back Andrew Rivera. You got Buckley back at quarterback. They got a host of guys back. And one thing we know about the Olsons, Dale and Dana Olson, they're going to coach their asses off. This team will be ready to play. Numbers or not, they have enough talent. They have the coaching. I think this is a pretty intriguing matchup on paper. Tyler?
I mean, both of these teams made runs in Division 3 last year. They're two semifinalists from Division 3 a season ago. Westfield was a 10 seed. They went on the road, won a couple games in Eastern Mass, and made it to the semifinals. They lost Kayvon Eddington, though. He's one of the best backs in the state last season. Milford, again, John, you mentioned it. The numbers are low, but they still have a lot of talent. Rivera, Buckley, Thomas Souza, these guys, very well coached. I think they're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in Division 3. I like Milford.
I think I'm gonna go with Milford in this one. I think Milford might be a little more seasoned. Numbers down. The thing about programs with numbers down is they rely so much on the starters. Like if there is some type of injury, the drop off from like the starters to the backup is always significant. But I think Milford will get this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a really good game, but this Milford program has been pretty consistent the last few years. Not that Westfield hasn't, because they have. Again, Coach Parent has done a tremendous job out there. I think at the end of the day, Rivera, Buckley, they're going to be able to make a few more big plays, and I think that'll prove to be the difference, in which I think is going to be a terrific matchup. This, to me, is one of those games that is going to be determined anywhere from 3 to 7 points. I think it's going to be that kind of game. And going on the road to play at a place like Westfield, that's going to be tough. So I expect this to be a really good game. I'm going to go with Milford, but I think it's going to be a tight game as well. All right, last 2 matchups here, and you're going to be at this game on Saturday for us, Mukala. Cardinal Hayes at Catholic Memorial. I know you're excited about this one. We were chatting the other day. Look, we talk about litmus tests and measuring stick. This is a measuring stick game for CM. Cardinal Hayes is one of the best programs in New York. This should be a pretty good matchup. McCall, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts?
And I recall they are the defending New York State champions, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, they're definitely a good litmus test for them. CM, one thing that plagued them last year was injuries. Injuries really got to them last year. Makai Dodd, he got hurt when they went down to Florida. They played a lot of young guys, first time starters last year, but they still made some waves. They still made a deep run. The team is loaded. The team is loaded with talent, offensively, defensively. They just have skill everywhere. Typical for a Catholic Memorial team. So I'm definitely excited to see this group of guys, because now, speaking to some of the players, they want to carve out their own legacy, because they were following the 2021 and 2022 team, which were 2 very dominant teams. Now they want to carve out their own etch in Catholic Memorial history as for this 2024 team. But yeah, there's a lot of talent at Catholic Memorial. There's so much talent there. So I'm definitely excited to see what they put out this weekend.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. CM's not quite as loaded as they have been in recent years. But with that said, they still have 3 BC commits on the team. I'm interested to see how Flannery takes the reins at quarterback with Peter Bork transferring to Tabor. So I think that's a bit of a question mark. They have some inexperience on the line. Like, it's a good starting point, obviously, with a guy like Marcelino Antunes and JD Rayner on that offensive line, but it is inexperienced. Rayner's changing positions, going from tight end to the line. So it's going to be interesting. I think Mekhi Dodd, like, he's a true workhorse. I think he's probably the most talented back in the state, or at least in the MIA. With that said, though, like, I think Hayes is probably a little better. I think they're probably a little bit more experienced. It should be really competitive. It should be a good game, but I think Hayes pulls it out in the end.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Look, McCall brought up the 2021 and 2022 teams, and those teams were just at another stratosphere. They were super talented, loads of talent, and this team has talent too. You mentioned the 3 BC commits, but I think in the end, this Cardinal Hayes team, they're one of the defending champions in New York. I think this is a program that has the kind of talent to match up with CM, because if you're going to beat CM, you got to be able to match up with CM. Marshfield was a bad matchup for CM last year. That's why they lost to him. I think Cardinal Hayes, in some ways, is a bad matchup for him. I think this will be a really good game. It'll be a close game, but I think Hayes pulls it off, and they end up winning it late. Of course, they won the Grip It and Rip It Passing League tournament down in Connecticut this summer, which is one of the best passing tournaments in the region. So this is a good football team. They bring back a good group of players, and I think that they're slightly better than CM. And the other thing we have to take into account with CM, Dodd's coming back off the ACL. They're inexperienced up front. We don't know what we're going to see out of Flannery at quarterback. It's interesting because when you look at D2, CM and KP are very similar to each other in terms of the composition of their teams. New quarterbacks, new faces along the offensive line, but both schools have a bunch of backs, and they're both going to be solid on the back seven. So, I think that defensively. So I think it's one of those things where when you look at the CM team, they're going to need to do some growing up here early, because if they're going to be there at the end, some of these young guys have to come along, especially up front. All right, and finally, we have Iona Prep on Saturday. They come to town for a matchup against Springfield Central. Iona Prep may be the best team in New York heading into this season. Springfield Central, many believe, is the best team in Massachusetts, including our Adam Kirkchin. Your thoughts on this one, Mukal? I'm going to start with you. Thoughts on this one? I'm excited to see the Springfield Central team play. You got Jarrett Stain, you got Isaiah Rogers, the super sophomores. This is a good football team. This will be a good test for them.
Yeah, and what a luxury for Springfield Central. You graduate with Pop Watson, then you bring in Jarrett Stain, and the offense just continues to flow. They have the receivers. They got, as you said, they got the backs. There's a team we might see at Gillette Stadium at the end of the year, just because all the firework that they have, firepower, I should say, that they have. And it's a good matchup right here. When you got another team, out of state team coming in, these out of state matchups they're good for everybody, just to see where everybody kind of matches up, where you're seeing top guys in each state going against each other. And I think Coach Watson, he always feels like he has the best players on the field anytime. So this might be one of those games. Might be an offensive output type of game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, last year wasn't as competitive as I thought it would be, or I'm sure that Central thought it would be. Iona won that one pretty easily last year. I think it's going to be much closer this time around. I probably still lean Iona. I think they're a better team at this point. But I agree with Adam that I think Central is the best team in Massachusetts, at least on paper. Obviously, really well coached with Coach Watson as well. But with Stain and Rogers and Cox and Early and Barber, Rios and Charles, like Jack Casey, this team is absolutely loaded. I think they're like clearly the best team in Massachusetts right now, in my eyes. I don't think Iona's as good. Quarterback Joey Gaston, brother of Ice Spice, which, John, I'm sure you listen to a lot of Ice Spice.
I do, actually. Yeah. I was listening to Ice Spice on the way here.
Gaston transferred to the Petty School in New Jersey, so they lost him. He was a dynamic player. He gave Central a lot of problems last year. With that said, though, again, I think Iona is slightly better at this point in time. It'll be closer to last year, but I like Iona Prep.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think when you look at that Iona Prep roster, it's littered with FCS commitments. They've got some FBS caliber talent. So does Springfield Central. I agree it'll be closer than last year's matchup, but I still think this is still a relatively young Springfield Central team, and I think that's the difference. That being said, I love that they're playing Iona Prep. They come east next week to play Central Catholic. I think these games are important for the Springfield Central football program if they're going to get back to Gillette Stadium and potentially win it all in D1. This will be a good test for them, but I lean Iona Prep. I just think they're slightly better. All right, gentlemen, great job tonight. As always, appreciate the time. Mukala, thanks for coming on with us, man. Really appreciate it, and let's do this again soon.
All right, thank you. You guys have a good evening.
You too. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of the High School Football Preview Show. For Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo, I'm John Serenitas. Till next week, peace.